The Fresh Prince. Do you remember The Fresh Prince? You old enough to remember The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air?
I've watched like 2 episodes of it.
I wasn't really the guy to watch it either.
It was just a 90s sitcom.
Yeah, like I wasn't born by the time it finished filming, for Christ's sake.
It was okay. I didn't when the episodes that I've watched I didn't find as insufferable as Friends.
But what's weird is like we're both aware of it because it was a huge thing. It was
huge, and it also spawned Will Smith's career. I think he might have already been a rapper, but I know that it's mainly where he comes from.
And I know it's credited with this view of like it's one of the few shows that has a well-to-do black family that could be watched by a mass white American audience, and therefore this helped heal race relations. It's become this meme.
Well, it's interesting that it came out around the same time as gangster rap started. No, honestly,
yeah.
Like the year before, 1989, I think that's when the NWA's first album came out with songs like F the Police on it. So I'm not saying that they are connected, but it might have been like, guys, we need some PR here.
Well, let's get this up.
PR.
Because a local rat has been making an argument for an interesting theory, which I didn't think would come true, but I think he's right. So as you can see, this is him posting and responding to this here. The French Prince of Bel-Air was a TV series from 1990 to 1996. All right. And he's talking about, do you even understand what the Back to Fresh Prince means? And this is a concept of this local rat account.
Wait, so does this person, the lighthouse keeper, think that it literally means we're going to get, 10 more series of Fresh Prince? Will Smith's coming back, boys? Because they already did a remake of the series.
Did they?
Yeah, they did. I've seen...
was it for 2020's riots?
Actual Justice Warrior, I think, covered 1 or 2 episodes of it. And yeah, it was just woke. It was as woke as you would expect.
But the concept, at least argued by this local rat, is that the regime has... I'm trying to put it as best I can. I know he's probably going to be angry at me not doing a great job, but oh well. I'm a local retard. So his argument is that the regime have basically noticed that the cat's too far out the bag. The openly anti-white stuff, it wasn't ready for that. You need to, replace a bit more of the population first.
You need to slowly boil the frog.
Yeah. And so the phrase he uses is to put the woke away. The idea that the Democrats, for example, are going to notice in their various outlets that this has gone too far. This is actually killing us, and we might not be able to make the full leap that we want to. So instead...
Or that things like DEI will lead to a competency crisis that we can't make up for with AI soon enough.
Yeah. So the idea is that we go back to telling everyone that, oh, no, everything's fine, actually. The Fresh Prince world, where race relations are hunky-dory. And just as
NWA might be a thing, but also look at Uncle Phil, I think his name was. He's got a good head on him.
But it's not just this world in which racism no longer exists and don't think about it. It's the anti-white stuff just becomes an undercurrent in the media. And I think that's his argument.
Well, from what I'm aware and my understanding of it, it does not mean that all of a sudden the regime turns around on all of its initiatives that have been passed through in the past 30 years since the 90s ended. It's all of those premises and all of the things that are now explicit, as you say, become the undercurrent. They aren't as explicit as in your face. You don't get films that outright look straight into the camera and have a black guy go, by the way, white people are bad and you should hate them and be afraid of them. And if you can, destroy their neighborhoods. Nothing like that. It's just going to be the subtext instead. It's going to be subtly done how Hollywood used to do it back in the good old days.
Yeah. And he makes this point in other places. So as you can see here, there's some news in which he's responding back to Fresh Prince. And the news is that Disney will revert to a more subtle and subliminal method of liberal indoctrination rather than the open-handed approach of put a woman in and make her gay and black.
Yeah. It'll go back to, obviously the 90s had some great Disney films in it, like The Lion King, for instance, but a lot of people point to something like Aladdin as where liberals get all of their ideas of criminality from. Oh, he's just Aladdin. He's just a poor boy who the society did him wrong. He's got a heart of gold. He's a prince at heart, really, which, lines up.
What? Lines up with their worldview. Yeah. I thought you meant lines up with all crime. I was like...
No, yeah, liberals' view of criminality is that they're all Robin Hoods, they're all Aladdins at heart.
Sorry for the interruption. I'm Father Calvin Robinson, and you can watch my Common Sense Crusade at 3 p.m. on Thursdays only on lotuseaters.com, where you can sign up for as little as £5 per month. Deus Vult.
And so I just wanted to talk about the fact that people have been noticing an awful lot, and as you can see, he's been noticing here. So this is some other news in which BlackRock, of all people, the CEO, comes out and tells a crowd at Davos that the United States is not prepared for 4 more years of Biden's $2 trillion deficits, 8 million illegals invading America, and a debt-to-GDP ratio going higher and higher. It's like, yeah, maybe it's going a bit too fast, buddy. Maybe you need to slow it down so people notice less.
Yeah, the managed decline is becoming less and less managed by the day. And it's becoming more and more obvious, hence why we're able to make a living.
And I'm worried because I think he's right. I think the rat is right that this is actually going to become a strategy. And I was a bit skeptical of it. But I was thinking, okay, he's giving them too much credence. I think these people are generally more stupid than they seem. But it seems there's a lot of strategy meetings, or at least the people picking up on that.
And that might be why Obama was visiting Downing Street the other day.
Maybe, because the reason I'm scared of this is it becomes it's a smarter strategy for our enemies politically, that they will be able to carry out the utter destruction of everything good about the Anglosphere, because they'll do it slower and people will have less resistance, and that's not good for us who want to save it.
Yeah, if you keep people comfortable, if you make it so that their entertainment slop that they're consuming is more subtle, more actually entertaining, because that's one of the reasons that Gamergate blew the lid off a lot of this, was that all of a sudden it became clearer and clearer the people making your entertainment do hate you, and they do want it so that you're not entertained by it, that you're lectured by it. Whereas before, it could basically be used as a mechanism to keep people happy and content.
And I've definitely noticed in the United Kingdom, with the huge amount of immigration we've got, that's new. I mean, it was mad already, and then it just tripled. Which, that level of change and that level of we don't care about the public's view has radicalized the public, for sure. I mean, you don't get a corner of English life that isn't just openly talking about how I can't believe everyone on benefits here is a foreigner.
Yeah. Also, here's an anecdote I had. So I was at a friend's birthday pub gathering a few weeks ago, and this is a crowd of people who are, university leftist types. And I was talking to one of them who was actually, friendly, approachable, and I always try and stay a bit, down low with these things in public if I'm speaking to people who I'm not trusting to be able to have a reasonable conversation with. And as the conversation went on for about 20, 30 minutes, it slowly started to shift over to these subjects. And eventually, because at one point I eventually just went, oh, by the way, here are some of my beliefs, because you seem like a decent guy who's not going to blow his lid over this. And you go, oh, fair play. And then eventually he just goes, sadly, I had to cut off the conversation here because I needed to leave. But he goes, what about that migrant crisis, eh? In a way that was like, if you disagree with me, it was just a joke. But if you do agree with me, we can talk about
I've got some views.
Yeah, basically.
Views I'll go to prison for.
Basically, I'm a university leftist, but I've noticed a few things that don't make me happy.
Because it's a piss take at this point.
Yeah.
It's not even some things have gone a little bit wrong and we'll try and fix it. The government is openly taking the piss. And the same with the United States, with Biden letting in 8 million illegals. I mean, there's just insane numbers of people. Never mind all the actual problems they'll bring. It's just the foundations there at the start. That is, we don't care about the public anymore. So what's the public's response? Well, we don't care about you, actually. So we need some kind of management there, is the rat's view. And the reason I sparked an interest in this, because this happened. You see him responding with that meme of Back to the Fresh Prince to the bloody Daily Show, who came out with this. The truth about DEI is, although that it's well-intentioned, it's mostly garbage. The Daily Show. Trevor Noah's piece of crap.
Which Jon Stewart recently came back to, and people were saying that Jon Stewart might have been another sign of this, because Jon Stewart was back when it was a little bit more under the hood and a little bit more subtle.
I thought we'd listen to a bit of it, because if for no other reason, it's weird to look at, because this is the sort of thing you find from, I don't know, Konstantin Kisin doesn't say anything like this anymore, of course, but when someone first starts to notice that things are going a bit wrong, and they live in London, like there'll be some new person who's got a YouTube channel or something.
Yeah.
And they'll usually be like, wow, I mean, the DEI stuff, I mean, I know what you're trying to do, but it's going a bit wrong. It's like the start, the drip feed. And then that person inevitably ends up at the point of like, no, this was evil from the get-go.
Yes.
Because that's
happened to a lot of us.
So it's weird to see from the Daily Show, because of course, if they go down the logical route, that's how they're going to end up. They're not going to, presumably, because they're, bought-in leftists. The amount of money they make is ridiculous. So let's listen to this chap talk about it real quick.
DEI. It means more fair hiring policies, new anti-discrimination rules for the workplace, and sensitivity training seminars. And the first thing it led to was a shitload of ads.
Real progress on diversity and inclusion doesn't happen without real work.
Say Celebrate Diversity into your X1 voice remote to discover curated content today.
Every day, General Mills serves the world by making food people love. And inclusion is one of our secret ingredients.
At Kraft Heinz, our purpose
Image
is to
full
make
of
life
Indians.
delicious.
Oh, God.
And we believe we can't achieve that without one essential ingredient: diversity. It's diversity that makes life delicious.
We're on a 400-year-long journey, and scars don't fade. But neither does hope.
Vaseline?
Yeah,
Vaseline?
Vaseline. I have to be honest, I found the food creepier.
Yeah,
The secret ingredient to our food tasting good is diversity. What?
we put so many Africans into this stuff.
Soylent Green is African. Stop eating it. It's really gross, if nothing else, to be like, yes, our food is made of diversity, which, okay. But he hits on a fair point, which I think everyone's hit on. This is so old, the so old hat, which is that you look at do you remember, who was it? I think it was the NSA or the CIA did that really cringe advert that was like, I'm a queer, diverse, neurodivergent woman of color.
Cooing foreign governments in the third world.
Yeah, it was just wrong on every level. And I remember at the time, you'd have people like, I don't know, Sean Head or whoever else, like some people on the left like,
Is this a good look?
and they tried to bat it off as arguing that the CIA was just trying to recruit people or something. And it's like, no, your ideology is the one in power, mate. This isn't an accident. This isn't, I tripped and fell. I've made diverse CIA. It's like, no, this is.
I mean, this has been the policy since in the 1960s and 70s. After they passed the civil rights laws, they thought, oh wait, actually, how do we prove that these companies aren't being discriminatory? Well, it's going to have to be disparate impact. So those laws got cemented in the 1970s.
So I was thinking, okay, maybe Roland Rat's incredibly right, and there does seem to be some argument for it so far. But I watched the full segment, and the full segment, I'm not going to play it all because it'll probably get copyright struck. And also, this guy is just actually not that funny. He's B team of the B team, which I'm sure he knows at this point. But anyway, his problem, as he explains, the problem with DEI, why it's all bullshit. Is not because of how corporate America just jumped on and is trying to use it for its own means.
Can I make a guess?
Sure.
Does he mention it's not reparations?
Almost.
It's not Gibbs. Where's my Gibbs?
In terms of jobs, he wants the Gibbs.
He still wants the Gibbs, which is literally what the policies have been since the 1970s, to Gibbs jobs to non-whites. Another guess?
I'll give you the direct quote on that one.
Oh, okay, all right.
He says, the problem with DEI is that the number of white people in positions of power is still the same. Which is just not true. It's just a lie.
That's an interesting thing about this, because if you consider people in power as being those at the top of the corporate ladder in these situations, I looked into this article when it came out, the big Bloomberg one. So, most of this was in the lowest jobs. So it would be in, say, cleaners or very low menial workers. So what this was actually doing is kind of what he's saying, which is that, the people at the top aren't being affected by these policies, but underclass and working class white people are being affected by these policies.
Removed.
Yeah, he doesn't care.
The largest group that was being replaced at the bottom, I think, was Hispanics were replacing the whites. That was the biggest shift.
That was the biggest one.
In middle management, that's where you got blacks replacing whites, but even then, there's not enough blacks anymore. There's too many blacks getting killed from abortions, and then there's no population growth as a result.
It's actually remarkable when you see that all of the other diverse populations of America are growing, but the blacks have remained at 13 and going down to 12% for decades.
Was it Margaret Sanger got what she wanted in the end?
Unironically, she did.
But the argument that, the number of white people aren't being removed from positions of power, I mean, that's not true. I mean, sitting in Britain, that's very true for us. I mean, I think the pentagram has been broken, brother, wasn't it, in Ireland?
Parag, whatever his name is, the Indian guy, he's leaving.
Yeah, there's at least one country in the British Isles not ruled by an Indian at this point. Maybe.
South Asian, let's be... Well, Wales is like half African guy.
Oh, yeah. Former imperials, then. So.
The fruits of empire, some would argue.
So I don't think this is true. I don't think the argument that nothing has changed is true. It's Doesn't seem to be.
Did he also make the kind of centrist argument of this will just empower the far right if they notice that the entirety of society is against European men?
You've got 2 in a row.
Yeah,
because I don't know if I can find it in here, but there's literally a segment where he just plays like Charlie Kirk and Dave Rubin making the most basic of points, which is if you hire people because they're brown, not because they can fly the plane, I'm worried that the plane might crash.
Yep. I mean, this is a pretty fair argument. I'm part of the planes not dropping from skies party.
Yeah, the annoying part is a portion of the audience at The Daily Show gasp when Charlie Kirk says that. It's like, are you this dumb? How do you not get... Okay, they are, so whatever. Yeah. But yeah, you've got 2 for 3.
Well, I think it's because they argue that the standards aren't being lowered. It was just that they just didn't want black people in these jobs in the first place. No, to get those people in those jobs, they lower the standards. There's lots of statistics on this. If you look at the Harvard statistics, I think it was something like if you're white and in Harvard, likelihood is that you had to be in like the 90th percentile at least, whereas blacks were in the 40th, 50th, 60th percentile.
Yeah,
for getting into Harvard.
I remember going through it with you. It was insane. But I'll see if you can get the last one here. So he says that the problem is that there's not enough, there's still too many white people. That's the problem with DEI. And the other problem is that...
they want to go bloody Rhodesia on this or something? Christ.
Yeah, the other problem is that the right-wingers and the Anglos are noticing that we hate them. So we need to pull the plug on that. So, I mean, Roland Rat is correct. That's the issue. And then his third point right at the end doesn't make any sense. I wonder if you can figure this one out. You know, the usual thing of like, deny it's happening.
And then say, well, if it is happening and it's a good thing, why do you care?
That's his third point. He ends up saying that we need real DEI. and quote, because the more the right freaks out, then we'll know it's working.
Wait, so one of his points is it's empowering the far right, but then if we continue to empower the far right by showing them that society hates white men and is structured against them in every way, then we know it's working.
Yeah.
So the more we shoot ourselves in the foot, the faster we're going to win.
I'll be honest, hate to be that guy, bit of DEI going on here. Not actually coherent.
Yeah.
In his own criticism.
Who is this guy? Oh, it's Charlemagne the God. Yeah, I've seen this guy about before.
Wasn't he the guy with Joe Biden?
I remember yes, he was. He was the guy who did.
You don't vote for me, you ain't black.
Yeah, he was that guy. I remember now.
How's that going? Anyway, but so that's them interacting with it, and I think the Roland Rat may be right about this. That there is some of that going on, some of the backpedaling. But at the same time, they don't seem to be very capable. I mean, Charlemagne the God, diversity hire, so maybe that's not the best argument for why they're not capable. But he tried here, and even he, when you look into it, failed in that regard. But I know you wanted to read something from this Rat Substack.
He'd actually written a little article about it very recently.
That was the real image of him.
Yeah, that was actually what the rat looks like. He's certainly not appeared on this podcast before. So let me just break out my reading glasses because
fancy.
I can't read without them. So here's a little quote that I've drawn from this. My view remains that unless the establishment can come to its senses and enact my containment plan, I like the fact that he's branded it as his plan, like he's behind the scenes with Tony Blair pulling the strings, putting the woke away, etc., and essentially to co-opt and normalize populist sentiment, the Keir Starmer route of turning around and saying, I'm the real conservatives, will get migration under control under the Labour government, there's populist arguments. There is a very serious risk of widespread civil unrest in the future, which is the reason why you'd want to do this in the first place.
Sensible argument. Now, that's how the left's interacted with it, which is to sort of shit the bed. Not even effectively interact the Rat's containment plan yet. But I wanted to talk about the right dealing with this as well, because there's a portion of the right that will fall for it that I think he's also correct about. So as you can see here, this is Matt Walsh a couple of years ago. And as you can see, the Rat's upset and is like, this needs to be discredited. This is nonsense. So Matt Walsh here says, not surprising, anyone who grew up in the 90s remembers that race was hardly an issue at all. Racism was rarely discussed. Things were fine until the left ruined it, which has a bit of a problem. At least I think so. And at least the Rat thinks so, which is you're missing what was going on, the undercurrent.
Yes. It was, in a lot of cases, it wasn't even an undercurrent. He points out here, the LA riot happened in 1992. If you watch my video on American History X, that film kind of peddles the narrative that if you talk about what happened to Rodney King in any way other than it was just police brutality, they beat him up for no reason just because they love beating blacks, you're a secret Nazi. You had Public Enemy in the 1980s rapping lyrics about how Elvis was racist, all white culture was stolen from black people. You had the NWA. This wasn't even just the undercurrent of the culture. This was, in a lot of cases, the culture that was being pushed on people.
Just because it wasn't seated in every hall of power doesn't mean it wasn't there.
Yeah, Pat Buchanan in 1992, when he was running for president, he was competing against Bush for the Republican nomination, did a speech called the Culture War speech, which was one of the first times that anyone had really acknowledged this up to that point. And he was demonized by the media for it. William F. Buckley wrote a book called In Search of Anti-Semitism, where he called out Pat Buchanan and said that he was an anti-Semite because he said maybe we shouldn't be as supportive of Israel as we are. And he basically got kicked out of the Republican Party for it, as far as I remember. So people were talking about this back then.
But this goes deeper as well, because I'm just thinking, again, maybe not my place, but I'm thinking just like homicide rates just comes to mind for me, which is the idea that I assume, maybe I'm reading too much into the rat's argument here, that if we go back to the Fresh Prince as well, racial differences also aren't a thing in the Matt Walsh view there. That, we go back to the 90s, race isn't an issue and everyone's just getting along. Okay, yeah, but there are still these community differences. We just look at this. This is homicide offending rates by race, and there's only two shown, which is white and black, which is a very low resolution, but there we are. But the difference is massive, and it goes back, to the 80s all the way to 2017, and it's still there. It didn't stop at any point. You can see it actually kicking back up in the 90s.
And we've discussed it before, this idea that in the late 60s, following the passing of the Civil Rights Act, and then into the 70s, and then through the 80s, it was just the Whig narrative of things just getting better and better. There's just progress making everything better, including race relations. And you think that, it must have been getting so much better as soon as the Civil Rights Act. No, the race riots of the 1960s went on right until the end of the decade. In the 1970s, read Brian Burroughs' book about leftist terrorism going on all throughout the 1970s and 1980s, where things like the Black Panthers were still a thing. You had left-wing organizations like the Weathermen. You had leftist organizations literally bombing the Capitol building. But they got away with it because, realistically speaking, their goals ultimately were aligned with what the regime wanted. The regime wasn't as in-your-face about it.
Yeah. For the sake of time, I'll have to end it here. But I think the rat is right, that there's a real problem if this going back to the Fresh Prince succeeds, because it's seductive not only for the left to be able to shut up the right and get on with their business and destroy the entire Anglosphere by the back door, but there's a section of the right that genuinely seems to think that everything will just turn into individualism paradise if you go back to the 90s, which doesn't seem to be true.
What it really lets you do is just switch off. It lets you switch off. I just want to, I know you want to stop, just very, very quickly, I just wanted to highlight as well, one flaw that somebody has pointed out with this is that its predictive basis is hinging on the idea that the regime is made up of sane and competent people, and some people do not believe that the regime is sane and competent, particularly one Oron McIntyre, who is a commentator we've spoke about before on here. He does The Blaze. He's great. You should all follow him and watch his stuff. He's fantastic. But he contends that the regime is currently run by insane people because DEI...
Which is also maybe true.
DEI was too effective because people in the halls of power now are literally insane or too old to care and want the world to burn because they're going to be dead soon anyway. Who cares? And they have a bet going on. AA saying the woke will be put away. Oron saying it will not. This is going until May of 2025, I believe, and it is the cigar rumble. And they both throw out examples that support their case. Patrick Casey saying here's a quote from a film where, what was it? If I'm asking you for, there's two black people cuddling in bed, and what do they talk about? Well, they talk about how much white people hate them, and if the apocalypse happens, don't trust white people in particular because they just hate us. AA saying that this will not happen in the future because films being produced in advance. He thinks that this is going to be one of the last films. Auron disagrees and posts
So they're having a fight.
picture of Macho Man.
Okay.
There's stuff like the Trans Day of Visibility being put out by the US president, and then also Lizzo supposedly quitting Negative Vibes and possibly music altogether. So there's arguments in either favor.
If you appreciated that episode from the podcast of the Lotus Eaters, you can go to lotuseaters.com to get access to all the premium contents on the site, such as the Epoch series, this episode on the art of Michelangelo. If you'd like to find out what else is being put out, you can follow on Twitter at lotuseaters_com on Twitter. Thank you and goodbye.